Right.
He's doing a great job.
Can you find a way to criticize what he's doing right now?
You excited?
I mean, seriously.
I think he started out exactly right. You have to send a message to people who are looking where they can create jobs that New York is, again, a place you can do that. Killing the millionaire's tax, day two, I think it is, in office, is the right thing to do. Even Governor Patterson said you can't do that. And he's got some budget difficulties, but they're manageable, and I'm hopeful that he will be able to balance it without raising any taxes at all.
Because, I mean, I read what he's saying about taxes. Obviously, New York is 50th out of 50 states when it comes to uncompetitive tax structure. And now he's talking about public unions, freezing spending on public unions.
You know, it's not that hard to do. I hate to say it, but when I took office, I had a gap of $5 billion, and a budget that was less than half the size of the budget today, so it was larger. And what we did that first year was not only not raise taxes, we passed sweeping tax cuts, lowering the income tax, lowering the corporate tax, getting rid of temporary taxes, phasing it in over 3 years, and we did it by reducing the size and the cost of government. And he's talking about freezing government employees' salaries. He's absolutely right. My first 2 years, we had contracts where government employees got a zero increase. And, in fact, we got some concessions from them where we could reorganize the government and make transfers so we could downsize without laying people off. So it's all doable.
Dr. Sachs, do you think Andrew Cuomo getting rid of the millionaire's tax, do you think that was an irresponsible thing to do? Or talking about getting rid of it?
Look, I do think that there is money at the very top that we ought to go after as part of a fair overall arrangement. So, you know, we're sitting on the greatest concentration of wealth in the world, and to say that's off the table as people are really getting squeezed and hurt, I don't agree with that. I think it's got to be balanced.
Jeff, when this was floated last year, you saw what happened, which is all the hedge fund managers went up to Connecticut and sat down with the governor, and the governor said, come here, you're going to be paying less than half the taxes you'd be paying in New York. And they would have gone. And I went through that in '95. There were a lot of major financial institutions saying Fairfield County, Connecticut's the place to be. You act as though we have a static society.
Oh, yeah, you know, I don't think that's a justified. I know these hedge fund. I know these hedge fund guys. Not one of them is going up to Connecticut.
That's not true. You go to Fairfield County now, and you have hedge fund.
I know
after
you got.
hedge fund.
I know you got. Steve
They're there.
They're not. They're there. Steve Cohn's there because he lives in Greenwich. Okay.
Well, he's also
and these
there
guys,
because the taxes
and these guys are. These guys are.
He doesn't want to
not only are they making the most in the world, but they're also paying the least taxes in the world.
Let me bring this down to the micro level. Let me bring it down on the micro level. I have a very small business. We have 11 employees. When they raised the taxes, when they put the MTA tax on, and then when they started talking about raising them again, we actually looked at Connecticut. You know, I live in New York. I'm not going to move from New York, but I have a lot of employees who don't have to be here. Most of our business doesn't come from here. And look what's happening. Texas, with zero income tax, is the fastest growing state in the country. States that have the highest tax rates are the ones that are not growing and, in fact, losing population.
We gave the example of New Hampshire being the one state in New England that seems to be growing right now because they have the most reasonable tax structure up in New Hampshire. Now, I've got to say, though,
but Wall Street's not in New Hampshire.
Connecticut's doing well because it's so close to New York.
But, you know, you bring up Connecticut, they just passed a millionaire's tax, and now they're down to number 47 out of all 50 states. This is a state that used to be so friendly to business, and Mika spent the 1990s watching when she worked up at Hartford, watching one corporation after another leave Connecticut, right?
Now,
let's talk about those Hartford days.
Oh, my gosh.
That hair was out to here.
It was a lot of morning anchor hair.
But didn't that happen?
Yes, Lowell Weicker. And they left the state. We covered plant closings. We covered closings of car dealerships.
Yeah, but
I want to ask the governor, because you talk about
the idea that it's all or nothing.
Yeah,
I
think there's a happy medium.
You're absolutely right that it's all or nothing. But we are now at almost 9% in New York. And
I'm talking just at the top. What about the financial transfer tax, by the way, which we collect and then rebate right back to Wall Street?
It was wonderful.
What that is.
Yeah, this is a great little story.
That's a tax that's collected. It's a very tiny amount every time that there's a stock trade. And it used to be collected. It was part part of the state revenue, and then about 30 years ago they started to give it back temporarily, and then it was permanently given back, and it's something like $15 billion actually collected and then rebated.
Jeffrey,
Yes,
this is the 21st century.
I know it is.
In the 20th century, you had this giant building called the New York Stock Exchange, and everybody had to be down on the floor in their little coats, screaming at each other, trading stocks.
Right.
Today, you go on a computer. You can be in Singapore or London or anything. If you put a tax in New York that doesn't exist in the rest of the world, you're going to see trading not just leave this state, it's going to leave the country and go offshore.
The idea that we have to leave the billionaires completely untouched in this world and let all the rest of us suffer is wrong. It's just wrong.
The billionaires are not untouched.
They are untouched. And these hedge funds running off to Connecticut, they're paying 15% tax right now because they get this carried interest scam.
Sure.
Complete scam. Congress won't remove it because these hedge funds finance the campaigns. This is pure scam, this stuff. Everybody knows it.
It's amazing how progressives don't understand in an interconnected global economy.
I understand a lot about interconnection.
You cannot impose a massive burden on people who have the ability to move and expect them not to. I mean, where has your scenario worked? New York raised taxes in the 80s and early 90s, and we had the same thing as you saw in Hartford, company after company moving to Texas.
Governor,
Texas is booming.
Okay, Doctor.